I'd like to call our fiscal court meeting to order. It's Thursday, March 26th, and it's 4 o'clock. This is a special called meeting, and I'd just like to share that we are closing the meeting to the public as recommended by the Commonwealth of Kentucky Office of the Secretary, and this is related to the COVID-19 outbreak. And all Kentucky boards and commissions are encouraged to take proper health precautions to mitigate the spread, including the use of video software for meetings. So we are live streaming this meeting at scottky.gov, live streaming. It's on our YouTube channel, and trying to make sure everyone stays abreast of what is being communicated at court meetings, and this will also be archived and available for viewing at any time. So we wanted to share that before we got started. Rand, is there anything else I think I should share? I think we've covered it.
Yes, sir.
All right. And Rand helped us make sure we were following the KRS as well, and appreciate his help. So we have taken every precaution to spread our court members out and make room, and I think we've done a good job of that, trying to model social distancing, and appreciate your all's help. With that said, I'd like to ask Stacy Hamilton to call the order, call the roll.
Mr. Hostetler.
Present.
Mr. Lyons.
Here.
Mr. Wallace.
Here.
Mr. Corman.
Present.
Mr. Ellison.
Present.
Mr. Burke.
Here.
Mr. Livingston.
Here.
Mr. Marshall.
Here.
Judge Covington.
Here. And I would like to ask the court to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Looking at number 4 on our agenda, we have to approve the minutes from the March 13th and the March 18th meeting. That would have to be done separately. Are there any questions or comments in regards to the minutes from the March 13th meeting as presented?
Motion to approve those minutes.
We have a motion. Is there a second? A second from Mr. Burke. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Now, to consider the minutes from the March 18th meeting. Any questions or comments related? Motion from Mr. Lyons, a second from Mr. Hostetler. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Minutes approved. Number 5, I'd like to turn your attention to the transfers as presented in your packet. Are there any questions? Motion from Mr. Livingston. Is there a second? A second from Mr. Hostetler. Any other questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, number 6, bills and hand checks. Are there any questions or comments in regards to those bills and hand checks as presented in your packet?
Motion.
Motion for Mr. Corman, a second for Mr. Burke. I took that as a second, Mr. Burke. Any other questions or comments?
Sold.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you all. Motion passes. Number 7, let the record reflect that Magistrate Kelly Corman and myself, Judge Covington, completed their training units accordingly. So I feel more advised. So number 8, Conservation District Report submitted. We don't need to take any action, but would open the floor for discussion, comment, or questions related to that report. And we shared that, and usually Mr. Tingle's here, but in an effort to follow protocol. We asked him to submit that in writing. Anyone like to make any comments? Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Bill.
Go ahead.
And we'll get these answered if we can't answer them,
Well,
and then report back.
I looked on here and I don't see any contact info. I was just gonna call Mr. Tingle myself, but I don't have his number. I did have a question about, I don't know what page it is, second or third, water quality testing. It says they perform it at 4 locations. I'm just wondering where that's at.
I have a phone number written.
So we'll get you that phone number, and then,
Call him. It sounds like they do this every year, the way I read it there. And, probably pick out 4 different places, I don't know, but kind of like if it's possible when they're doing it the next round, some of the creeks up in the northern part that we've had issues with, Little Eagle dumps into Eagle Creek.
Is that not well water testing?
I didn't take it to be that, but maybe it is. I don't know.
Because the city of Georgetown Municipal Water and Sewer,
It says it's performed at 4 locations throughout the year, with samples being sent to the University of Kentucky, so I'm not sure, Bill.
I think that may be well water.
Well, I'll learn that, yeah.
Because Georgetown Municipal Water and Sewer, Kentucky Fair, they test, I think it's like every 40 seconds,
Yeah,
as it goes through the system.
yeah.
Do they get submitted overall request of the amount of money as far as their budget?
I believe this would be the,
Okay,
No, they submitted a budget request.
but it's around $200,000. Is that correct?
I thought you asked if they submitted one.
They submit, yes, Chad, to answer your question, I'm sorry. They submit a budget request in the amount of $200,000.
what is that as far as in regards to what it was last year? Okay, I knew they didn't raise it the year before, well, between last year and this year, but,
Several years it's been tested.
okay,
One week last year, but I think probably was
okay.
Another thing I was gonna ask is, I mean, just for my benefit only, will he come back, when this craziness, and do a report then, so we just kinda get that overall, more than you can get from just reading through the thing?
Oh, I'm sure he'd be happy to come back.
I would see it being valuable to me, but I don't know
Yeah.
if anybody else, it might be old news to you guys.
No, we'd be happy to invite him and just trying to navigate the waters.
Might be October,
Come on, don't say that.
Any other questions for that matter? And we will look to ask him if he would come back and give a presentation. But that report, for the record, has now been submitted, and we will ask him to come back for sure. Next, number 9, EMS new hire. Jeff, are you presenting that information?
They don't have it.
You can just step to there. Does everybody have the information that's presented? Any questions in regards to that? Motion from Mr. Hostetler, second from Mr. Livingston. Any other questions? Motion to approve EMS hire as presented. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Number 10, need to have the record reflect that the jail budget was submitted by Jailer Darren Broyles, and we will share that with the Budget Committee. And the Budget Committee has met, and we have worked through just looking and reviewing requests. We've not completed the general fund, but hope to maybe do that tomorrow via Zoom at 8:30 a.m. And then we will turn our attention to the road and jail funds next, just working through those as requested.
Did everybody receive it?
Okay. Any questions, comments? We'll move on there to number 11, emergency leave policy, EPSLA and EFMLEA temporary policy. And Jeff's done a lot of work on this. just to make sure that we were aligned with what we should have for our employees. So I'm going to ask Jeff to share about those two policies.
Thank you, Judge. As you know from the email I sent you, that Families First Coronavirus Response Act was passed last Wednesday. And so these two acts were embedded within that act. And that is the Employee Paid Sick Leave Act and the the Emergency Family Medical Leave Expansion Act, which is what this policy is meant to do, is to adopt it for us here at the county. And I've poured over a lot of resources from the Department of Labor, from CAECO, from the Kentucky League of Cities, making sure that what we have written here is accurate and is in compliance with the acts. Primarily, I guess if I was going to point out anything in this policy, it's that it provides a person with 80 hours of paid sick leave under the Employee Paid Sick Leave Act, and it also provides some protection to part-time employees. And the primary reasons are most commonly going to occur with items B, C, D, and E in that list. That a person is either advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine due to COVID-19 concerns, C, experiencing COVID-19 symptoms and seeking medical diagnosis, D, caring for an individual subject to federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order, or advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine due to COVID-19 concerns. And then caring for another who is subject to an isolation order or advised to self-quarantine as described above is not limited to only family members. And E, caring for the employee's child if the child's school or place of care is closed, or if the child's care provider is unavailable due to COVID-19 precautions. So that's what it's meant to protect a person for. And that's when a person can use that 80 hours of employee paid sick leave. Now with regard to this, we've given you two options to look at. The first option is the one that we're recommending, is that Employee Paid Sick Leave Act will be paid at the employee's regular rate of pay. And that's for all situations, including the child care, a person who's unable to work because of child care or their daycare being closed. And as you can see, there are indicated in option one, employee paid sick leave will be paid at the employee's regular rate of pay. According to federal regulations, though, healthcare providers and emergency responders are excluded from the definition of employees who are allowed to take such leave under the Employee Paid Sick Leave Act. However, Scott County will permit healthcare providers and emergency responders to use employee paid sick leave when B or C above applies. So that's our recommendation. If you go with the way the law is written, it says for A, B, and C above, employee paid sick leave is paid at the employee's regular rate of pay. For D, E, and F above, employee paid sick leave is limited to 2/3 of the employee's regular rate of pay, up to $200 per day, or $2,000 in total. And of course, healthcare providers and emergency responders are excluded from the definition of employees who are allowed to take such leave under the Employee Paid Sick Leave Act. So that's the first element. The second is pretty much just following the way the act is written. It also provides protection if a person is unable to work because their child is in school and unable to go to school, or the daycare is closed. And it provides an additional, well, it provides a total of 12 weeks of leave. The first 2 weeks are typically covered under the Employee Paid Sick Leave Act. Then the following 10 weeks can be covered under this extension or expansion act, allowing a person to receive 2/3 pay for the remaining 10 weeks of that leave. So that's what it's meant to cover. And as you can see there, beginning with the third week, a full-time employee at 2/3 of the employee's regular rate or the number of hours the employee would otherwise be normally scheduled to work. The EFMLEA limits this pay entitlement to $200 per day and $10,000 in total per employee. And of course, there's also protection, once again, for part-time employees, which is covered in item B. And I also added a statement here: the appropriate executive authority shall determine which employees are eligible for continued work or telework based upon the needs and capacity of the county. Once again, this provision is available for those who are unable to work or telework. If a person's able to telework, then they could continue receiving full pay instead of getting 2/3 pay. But if they are unable to work or telework, then they would just be home and only receive 2/3 pay.
Is this in addition to what is currently already offered?
You mean FMLA?
No, I'm sorry, I talked the sick leave.
Yes, it's in addition, it's a federal mandate, it's in addition to any employer's sick or vacation leave.
Okay. So how does that affect, what is where do we stand with regards to health insurance if you're not at work? And how long before are all those penalties or whatever you'd like to call them taken off the table at this point in time if somebody is out?
Well, it's not a COBRA qualifying event, so they would still continue to be covered under a health insurance plan.
Okay.
And if they're covered under FML, you have to, and this runs concurrent with FML, so you have to continue health insurance while they're on FML. So yes, they would be.
I just want to make
Yeah.
sure that it's not doing something that's an unintended consequence that
Sure.
stretches out their sick leave for so long that, they don't have the protection to keep their health insurance.
Right.
Jeff, in terms of, under this policy, if, let's say that I have 36 sick days, and I work for the road department, or any department, but a department where I have to be there, I can't work from home, okay? And my kid's school closed. So would I not have to be required to use all those sick days up prior to me being eligible?
No,
Why not?
that's the way this legislation reads. This comes first.
And then after the 80 hours, then the days would kick in?
Yeah, after the 80 hours, if they,
So 2 weeks.
for example, I mean, the example you gave, I mean, roads is not exempt. I mean, you can exempt the emergency responders from people who are eligible for the paid sick leave or the FML leave. That's the only group you can. But to answer your question, yes, if a person has gone through their first 10 sick days that they're going to be provided under this legislation, if nobody's sick, there is no more sick time. I mean, you have to be covered under B or C, I guess. You have to be experiencing symptoms, or once your first 2 weeks expires, let's say that you had it, now your spouse has it. And if you're staying home to care for them, then yes, I guess you could use your sick leave at that point. But no, this protection, this pays a person first. And then any company's sick leave then is secondary.
How do I don't remember how we define sick leave, though. Sick leave, in the school system, you gotta be sick.
Or your kid has to be
Or your
sick.
kid has to be sick.
And that's the way ours is defined. You have to be ill or injured. It's either for your own care or a family member of the family, yes.
Okay. Now, how does this, so let's say it's how does this tie into work comp?
Well, it doesn't.
I don't know if the legislation specifies if they contract the illness or disease from their.
You would have to prove that that's how you got it. And that's where it's going to be difficult,
And
honestly.
you wouldn't be able to draw both.
No.
Okay. That's what I was concerned about, is if somebody does contract the disease, and it is work-related, can they draw this 80 hours and work comp? Because that'd be an unintended consequences where you're getting paid 100% of your salary through sick time and then 66 2/3 to work comp. Because
Well-
school districts allow that for you to draw both to get to 100% of your salary.
But if you're better within 2 weeks, then you're back before workers' comp really starts to,
I think work comp is day one now with the,
is it?
I
Okay.
think so.
I'd have to,
Edie is processing work comp claim with COVID diagnosis. I don't know if they've approved it yet, but they're not denying it yet.
Well, don't worry what the governor tells you.
okay.
I'm not-
But that is one I would,
It's not-
Yeah.
I'd have to look to see. I mean, of course, the normal coverage is, days 1 through 7, it's the employer pays, then days 7 to 15, they kick in, and then the 15th day beyond, they go back and pay first 1 through 7. But honestly, I've been so busy trying to
Yeah.
get a handle on this that I haven't.
It's been a fluid,
I'm comfortable with your recommendation from you and the judge. I'm just.
we didn't want to leave out those two categories of employees.
Right.
I felt like it would be irresponsible.
But what emergency, so this is for when there's emergency FMLA. So are we talking about when the judge declares a state of emergency, the governor declares a state of emergency, or the president, or is it all? I mean, you see what I'm saying? So when does it stop? And-
Well, this act is in a play. It starts April 1st. There's no stopping it, and it doesn't expire right now till December 31st.
But it says pursuant to federal paid, subject to federal, state, or local, forget that, I'm sorry, I was reading wrong. It doesn't designate which one,
Okay.
but, you know,
As long as one of them's in play, then this will apply.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
and I'm
Yes.
gonna follow the lead of state and federal.
I understand that. I was just looking for the expiration date of how that all ends.
And then, you know, something that I want to talk about while we're on this, and it's related, I believe, and stop me if it's not, I know David will, because I want to follow the agenda, but I do think this is related. You know, I sent an email and corresponded, you know, state offices were going to A/B schedules just to preserve, you know, the best chance to provide services. And, you know, we've gone to A/B, the jail can't do it, sheriff's deputies can't do it, fire department can't do it, EMS can't do it, but we've worked through that with those other offices, and you know, if you all have concerns about that or want to discuss that, I feel like that's related to this as well, and I would value any input from you, but I just want everybody to know what we're doing.
Well, if I can ask a question along those lines, we're doing that at the county attorney's office. So people clock in and out on the days they work, either Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Wednesday's half day, or Tuesday, half day, Wednesday, Thursday. But they will be paid, I'm asking, in full, just like always, correct?
Absolutely.
And the conversation on Friday afternoon originated once the AOC sent out a letter. County clerk came, her and Deputy Kenneth Portwood came and asked, inquiring about doing this. I did not feel like it would be the right way to just not to include everybody, all constitutional officers and department heads in the conversation called RAND. RAND, would you like to comment on what your feelings are on it?
On doing
The
that?
AB.
Well, I think it does minimize the contact between people. You know, in our office, if everybody's there upstairs, there's 9 people. So now it's about half that. You can do some work from home in our office, not a lot. But I think it cuts down on interpersonal contacts.
We were just trying to preserve services, and that took the lead from the state. And I just wanted to put that out there and have conversation now. I do feel like that's tied to this, and if anybody had any comments or suggestions, I'm open.
When you said to preserve services, I thought you were looking possibly also more for the employees
Oh,
not being together, but
no, and I should have mentioned that, and Rick, I appreciate you. That's, you know, that was the lead part of the conversation on Friday.
well,
Yeah.
and I knew that because they talked with, or I heard some of this kind of even Rand saying something about it in one of my conversations, but I thought about it, the other side of that coin is, most folks, Lowe's is full of people right now. I mean, if folks don't try to stay home,
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's all the goal, but I guess you can't force it.
Yeah.
So
And we're trying to communicate, stay at home as much as possible, you know, and be accessible. Those that can do work from home are, and, you know, that was my best approach at the time. And I hope you all know that I try to bring everything to you all and try to communicate and try to keep you all on the same page as I am on knowing what's going on. And this has been a very busy time, and it's been kind of I've used this comment, you know, you feel like a one-legged man in a butt kicking contest. That's kind of been, you know, we've been busy.
How's animal control working? That's the only one that, I think it's one of those weird ones that.
They're cleaning cages, feeding animals.
So
They're doing
they're
AB.
doing AB.
Okay.
But they're taking care of that, and then they're only doing emergency calls, like if it's a vicious animal, but they're not doing, like if it's just a stray cat at my front door, they're not going to pick that animal up.
Well, obviously, if you don't do this, you lose continuity, because if one person gets COVID-19, has to be quarantined, the whole office is going to need to be quarantined. So it only makes sense to at least try to find some way to, since we have to continue operations, to find a way to do that.
Well, let me ask you about that, Jeff. So let's say somebody in our office tests positive. Does everybody that works there, let's say they're a shift person, everybody in the A shift stays home for some time period?
I would,
My answer to that would be this: we would immediately contact Dr. Miller.
Get her.
We would give her the specifics.
Okay.
I would, like, if I heard that you were positive,
And I'm there every day.
you're there every day.
The whole office.
And I'm here every day. But we would get, and she's accessible, we would get recommendation.
Okay.
And move from there.
That's probably nothing we need to
Yeah.
worry about now. Never mind.
But what other questions, and how would, how else could we navigate this?
We're gonna have to pick one of these options.
I think option one or option two, and in my mind, I just felt strongly, and Jeff, in conversation with Jeff, that we would not leave EMS and first responders out of this picture. Yes, sir.
I move we adopt option one. I can't see at this time, probably most support group we have, I can't see anything out of this.
Yeah. So we have a motion,
Slap in the face.
is a second from Mr. Ellison. Any other question or discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes for option one.
thank you. And I guess along the lines, just a couple of the quick points is, we're working with our payroll provider to determine if they can assist us with tracking the use of these two leave categories. If not, we'll figure out some way to do it ourselves.
And then let me say, like Jeff has been on this, and like, it's important, and we couldn't get it done without his expertise, so thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Now, next, we're going to go to number 12, EMA part-time staff. And Jeff, maybe you just sit over there at the door, and then we'll let Mike come in.
Okay.
Last week, when all this was rolling through, and really it was the week before, I think, that we started talking, you start talking about, and you don't know the volume of need that there will exist. So we were talking about those that might be self-quarantined, self-isolated, those that might be elderly, or those that might be immune-compromised, the compromised immune system, that we might have to set up something, a helpline, to help get medicine, essential food, or essential medical supplies. So we talked with the city. We looked at doing this together with EMA. We reached out to Transform Scott County, and we reached out to the Amen House about assistance. And Transform Scott County helped schedule volunteers to help answer the phones. Amen House has came to the table of, we essentially set up a flow chart. Jeff set up a flow chart asking questions. And if, have you ever worked with the Amen House? If you need food, have you ever worked with them before? Do you have funds to pay for the groceries or food? And we set this flow chart up, and we've worked through, the logistics. I did not want to, start on Friday last week and the phones just overwhelm us. So we had to talk about, who else could help deliver, and if we had to use county vehicles, who else could do that? And we talked to the sheriff. The sheriff talked about it would be best, and Tony helped, with court security people serving as medicine pickup and drop off. We just felt like if they were handling medicine, it might be best if they did that. And then we started talking about who could help deliver food, and JR volunteered, to have a couple road department people on standby, EMA, but we started talking about this, and then the rest of the other shoe kind of dropped about, liability and workman's comp and all the other pieces of that issue. And to date, what we've always done is those people that assist at EMA are called volunteers. And if they call and respond to a request for need, they are paid most of the time a $38 stipend. Is that correct, Mike?
Most of them are making $30 a stipend. We have leadership, 2 volunteer captains that make $38.
Okay. So, that's where we were, and
Is that daily, or is that?
That's per run.
Per run.
So, if we get a tractor trailer turned over and we're out there for 16 or 18 hours, they get $30. If we do a search and rescue and we're only out there for 2 or 3 hours, they get the same $30. So,
That's up to 125.
right.
so the discussion came with talking with Rand about under 39A, could we make them temporary part-time employees just until we could get to court here today and pay them $10 an hour if we got just ran over? And the truth is, we have not been ran over, which I'm thankful for, and that reflects that our community's taking care of each other. But as time goes on, our calls have gone up some, and we have to just be ready for it, I think. But Amen House, they've covered almost all the food needs. They've covered all the food needs. There's been 4 or 5 prescription calls, and the sheriff's deputies have picked those up. They've all been prepaid. I mean, I really felt that our physical court and our county needed to be prepared to assist if needed. And I think that's what we've done, and I think it reflects the appropriate response. But what I want you all to consider is, how do we go forward with our EMA part-time staff or volunteer staff? And Jeff and I talked to Rich Ornstein and Joe Greathouse at CAECO. Jeff, could you step in and clarify what Joe Greathouse and Rich shared?
Yeah, I have an email here at a couple key points. He indicates that, and this is Rich Ornstein, that he thinks that these are employees if they're getting paid, not volunteers. And also, it's hard to argue that payments to workers are expenses if you aren't able to quantify any expense incurred by these individuals. Typically, that's how you reimburse the volunteers, based upon expenses. But you can't show that there were expenses. It's hard to indicate what that reimbursement was for. I also think it'd be difficult to argue that these individuals are independent contractors. However, there was one clarification, but it appears as if though some of the advice that Michael got it's in conflict with this, is that emergency management volunteers are covered under the state program while performing preparedness functions or engaged in emergency response. Paid employees would be covered by CAECO's workers' comp, but not if we're not withholding taxes on those payments that they're receiving, that could be problematic. And that's not the case right now. I mean, those volunteers are getting a 1099 and just being paid technically as independent contractors, or volunteers, if you will. So that's the challenge we're trying to deal with. And I had some other notes. And also a key thing is that these volunteers aren't covered under the Volunteer Protection Act for the work, especially if they make more than $500 in a year, which is true.
So
8 of the 10.
So there's additional information. The budget that Mike pays the per diem to the volunteers from EMA for 1920 was $17,000. To date, I think there's been there's might as well say $4,000 left in that budget for this year, and this was ran 2 days ago or a day ago. So if we decided to create a part-time emergency response officer position and pay them whatever you all want to pay them, $10 an hour, then Mike would still have to operate within a budget, and that budget, and then go forward with that. I mean, that's pretty much the basic decision. Do you want to,
Are we just talking about one person?
no, we're talking about usually,
Probably half a dozen.
Yeah,
So
But,
all of those, whatever, 6 to 12 people that you try to use fall under that?
yeah.
That
And the
title,
reason being,
subtitle that everybody's kind of,
some of them can't come at times, and some of them can, and,
right.
I mean, they're kind of on the fly, and I'll let you talk, Mike.
It's hard to fire volunteers.
no,
It-
yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to hire.
But they're not volunteers, they're getting paid.
Well, and that's been an argument that I've had, certainly through the last 15 months of my tenure, but, 5 or more years while Jack was the director, asking for that very description. I would ask Jane, if these people are contractors, where is their contract? What is their job description according to the county? And that was never provided. Everybody just kind of kicked the can down the road. What actually brought this to a head was Mr. Mudrack came to me and said, if they are volunteers, they should sign a hold harmless agreement with the county. They're volunteers, they're not covered under any kind of, protection by the county. And I said, I personally have a problem with asking them to do a hold harmless and then telling them I need you to run lights and sirens in a county vehicle. It may or may not be putting yourself into harm's way. And you're saying that you're going to take all of that responsibility on yourself with your own health insurance, your own workman's comp if you choose to carry it. I said,
By the way, put on a white tie, that suit, and a respirator to help clean up this mess on the side of the road.
that's right. And if we happen to have a major collision that requires reconstruction, I'm going to need you to stand in the intersection acting like a police officer, diverting traffic or doing, they're doing a lot of things that are considered employee. They've just never gotten that recognition, that title. And it's one of those things that you don't think about it until it pops into your head. Every time EMS comes in with a personnel question, Mr. Hostetler asks the same question. Are you up to full staff? Does this get you whole? In the 13 years that I've been part of this agency, nobody's ever asked that question. What does it take to run an EMA program? And can 1.5 people, or now 2 full-time people, get that done? And my answer is, without major cuts in what we do, we can't do it. There's not enough hours in the day for me and Captain Kraft to accomplish what we're doing with this agency.
So all we need to do is create the position, and then is there gonna be a, not above so many number, or is there, will it be free reign to hire as many as you can?
I think that's the question that the court needs to,
And it's gonna have to be dependent on the frequency and the seriousness of the event.
But I
Well, I'm
think
saying
that-
you gotta have them lined up, ready to roll prior to any type of an event.
Right. And basically, the way it works right now is I've got 3 people that I can call on any minute, any day. And then the other 7 kind of pick up the slack. Just because you can't say to a volunteer, I need you to be available from 8 to 4 on this day.
If we
And,
gave you 10 spots,
right,
you feel like you could
yeah.
roll and have
Yeah.
fluidity and never,
And, by going this way, if we had 10 spots, that would be plenty for what I need to accomplish. And
the $10 range things still stay within your, I mean, you're gonna go up in budget.
like right now, he's,
Which I don't think it's worth,
go ahead, Bill.
I'm gonna make a statement. These people in EMA, they're trained to run the radios, they're trained to run the generators, they're trained to run the equipment, they're trained to do everything that we ask them to do. And in my mind, they're worth at least as much as what we pay a chicken.
100%.
We're used to it.
How do you track hours and how do you track to make sure that that doesn't start getting out of control?
Again, this is gonna, that's an administrative function. I'm worried
Yeah.
about the mechanics of putting this thing together so that it works. We start talking about taking people who are fairly highly trained at what they do and been doing it for a long time and paying them $10 an hour, they can get that, on roller skates at Sonic.
I thought so.
Okay?
I'm just saying we're gonna have to up his budget you know, to be able
Right.
to handle it.
The $10, I asked Mike, I
Well-
said, Mike, what would you, because
$10 more than what they're getting if they're staying out there 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
The big thing right now is that my quality people are having to give back every penny that I pay them for their reimbursement, or whatever you want to call that, on April 15th. You get a 1099 for this many hundreds of dollars,
So they're
that's
they're earning over,
over 600, so they get a 1099, and, yeah.
so see, that's what I'd like to know, is how many incidents are there, how many hours are put in, exactly what's going on before just approving positions. I mean, I can't approve something,
Well-
that I don't really.
Well, I think
know
you
the
already-
nuts
I
and
think you already
bolts
got
of
'em.
What's occurring.
David,
I think you already got 'em.
You get them every, bill pay, it's a
Right.
line item.
I would like it, but if you're coming for a request to change it in the way we do the whole process, I'd like to see a whole breakdown of what's occurred in the last year, the last 2 years, or. And then, let me ask you this, where does this tie in with, isn't there something at the state level with regards to workers' comp and EMA?
According, I talked to Colonel Byrd, the Assistant Director of Kentucky Emergency Management, and his counsel to me was, if I have a search and rescue team, that's covered under state workman's comp. If I have community emergency response team, all of the people that come out for their 19-hour training and we say wave goodbye, those people would be covered under workman's comp if activated. Doing 300 responses per year, doing the things that Bill was just talking about, putting on the Tyvek suit, stopping the hazmat until a certified cleanup company comes, those deals are not covered under.
Is that part of the driving
Take
factor
those
here?
agreed, they said
Well, is
absolutely.
that part of the driving factor here of doing this is partly because of workers' comp?
It's a big thing with workers' comp.
Let's put that out there then. That's part of it.
Workers' comp and liability.
Well, but the thing is, when they're, I think EMA is covered under CAECO's liability, therefore, they would be covered with liability,
Okay,
is my understanding.
They are.
I'm not your agent, so I'm just asking.
Right.
I'm just saying the way I think it is. And then on work comp, there's also a dissenting opinion from an attorney that has reviewed the KRS that says Colonel Byrd is wrong.
okay.
So until those two things are played out, what we're really talking about here is what people make. We're not talking about liability and workers' comp. Because
yeah.
I'm being told that on the flip side of that, liability is fine and workers' comp, based on this other attorney's opinion, is fine.
Okay.
So what we're really talking about is hiring these folks as part-timers and paying them. We're not doing it under the guise of they're not covered.
The other thing, Judge, I think it's important, we need to know what we're talking about, of what they're doing here. I mean,
I asked Mike to put together a part-time emergency response
Yeah.
officer job description.
they work parades, and I know they're, am I right? And they're needed to work parades, but there's no training that goes with parades. And maybe I'm wrong.
Right.
But, I mean, I think it's important that when we say emergency agency, we are also, we're looking at it holistically, not just the wrecks that take place out on the interstate. We look at everything. The other thing that we need to also think about too is what do other counties do?
A lot of counties have an EMA director and nothing else.
Right.
And that EMA director may handle 2 hats.
Where are the
Volunteers
constables?
or
Can we not call the constables when we need
Know about it.
part-time help?
Jeff,
I mean,
We don't pay the constables anything.
we've got these
but it's a stipend just like they would get with being a
You'd have
volunteer.
to, you'd have to, in my opinion, you'd have to be navigating the same thing that you're navigating with them that you're navigating now.
Yeah, it wouldn't be any different.
I don't disagree with you that you need a job description, what they exactly do. I don't disagree that it would be good to have data from over the past couple years of how many runs have been placed. I'm just telling you all that this is like drinking through a lot of things that came up, and this is why we're talking about it. I don't think we absolutely have to make a decision today. But I felt like it was proper to bring it to the court, today. Bill?
Couple things going on. One is we need a valid job description. Two, we need 3 or 4 years worth of data to know how many hours, how much money we're talking about here. We need to establish the rate of pay. And Jeff, can these people be at a PRA status?
What's that?
Throwing data as needed?
Well, that's essentially what we're requesting is as needed up to 100 hours per month. You know, we're not going to exceed the 100 hours, which
So again, what that gets us back to, Mike, is it's dependent upon the frequency and or seriousness in the event they're involved.
absolutely. You know, in 2009, I would have been in deep doo-doo.
You know, we're not paying people to sit down at the EMA hall and play cards.
No, absolutely not. I've got 2 years of hard data right now with, you know, in 2015, we made 128 runs. In 2018, we did 340. But I have it right down to the quarter hour, what each individual has been assigned to. And the numbers are lower by going per hour than with the per run. Because, you know, if I get a call for tractor trailer tipped over with methyl ethyl death, I'm calling 5 or 6 people. When I get there, I find out that it's a John Deere tractor pulling a farm trailer. I cancel those people. So in that case, that would have been $0 or, you know, up to maybe $10.
Remember once I was driving down a country road, and I look up and I see a guy in a white shirt standing in the middle of the highway, and he stops me and says, just over the hill, we got a tractor trailer full of batteries flipped over, you gotta turn around.
Do you want the constable doing that cleanup? Or, you know, I understand what you're saying with the parade, and, you know, we can discuss which job descriptions are payable and which are not. They do the parade just because police department says we've got positions available, we can't cover intersections. If that doesn't fit into their job description, I'm fine with that. But, you know, if we're going to ask these people to be qualified to do hazardous materials cleanup and major searches and, you know, things that are well within our job description.
What did your response look like on the railroad derailment that was not too long ago? I mean, how many people did you call out? How long did they?
I had my entire staff out. At that time, Jack was in charge. He had 13 volunteers available. And we were there for almost 70 hours. But the actual response, you know, we closed it 15 months later. We were having to do follow-ups. You know, some guy was selling wood off the side of the flat car, burning up stuff next to the tank car that we're watching. You know, we're getting called back frequently on the same thing.
But Judge, I also want you to know that Mike made the comment that no one had asked him about the needs of your department.
Right.
But I will say that Jack Donovan had made that same request that you're making now
Right.
many years prior to Judge Covington and to this court. So
Right.
we're very aware, all of us are back, so we're
Right, yeah.
well aware of.
We're well aware.
Went from 20 to 25, I think $38.
Right.
Well,
And
what a fight that was.
And the question remains, you know, like you said, Jack has asked for this, you know, several times that I'm aware of, but it never happened, and I'm not quite sure, you know, if we're not going to do this, then we need to, you know, sever ties and say we want one EM director who will only work during times of declared disaster, and, you know, I just would like a conversation that says which way.
And I think we've started that conversation.
Right.
And I think that we can get the data together. But for right now, under 39A, the KRS 39A, you shared with me and we conferred with Rand, we've made these individuals temporary, emergency, part-time.
Right, as long as we're under the declared
And-
disaster.
Right, and it's not been, you know, like you shared with me, a total of 29 hours have been
Right.
had been worked just, I think, yesterday. But these monies can be applied for through FEMA for reimbursement.
Correct.
There's no guarantee.
No,
But I still feel like we did the right thing by setting it in place.
I don't think there's anybody here that's against this idea. It's the mechanics and how we put it together.
Sure.
How we structure it.
Yeah.
And again, and I'll fall back on my business. We do diving rooms.
Mhm.
We do a lot of them. And there's many times, and I don't get the schedule, they just call me up and tell me when to come.
Right.
And there's many times when, you know, I've got to saddle up and go do, or if I can't saddle up and go do, because I'm doing something else. I have people who are concealed carry qualified, who are trained to do this, who don't want to work full-time, who really don't even want to work part-time. And we have them on what's called a PRN status, prorated hours. It's as needed. And we'll call them up and say, we have 100 of them, and we need you. Okay? And well, they just saddle up and go. And then after it's over, they turn in a time sheet, we pay them for it. In the meantime, as far as my liability insurance is covered, as far as my honesty bond, as far as my workers' comp, they're an employee in every sense of the word. Okay? We just totally pay them as they work.
Can I ask, I'm sorry, can I ask a question? And you may have said this earlier and I missed it. But do you know how much you paid out last year for those particular volunteers, like the 1099 people, or an approximate amount? Was it the 17?
Through right now.
Through right now, for this year, he's paid out
$13,000
$13,000. His budget's been $17,000 for the last few years. Is that right?
Yeah.
So 17,000 to me, I mean, that's, it makes so much sense to do this, to hire somebody full-time. It's gonna be a $20,000, $30,000 a year job plus benefits.
Right.
So I don't know why, I mean, it seems like it makes so much sense to.
And, you know, and my policy and the way I think is that it makes a whole lot more sense for part-time and/or PRN, because, you know, if we have a major incident on the highway and I need to have people at all of the interstate exits, having 3 full-time people doesn't help me.
Right.
You know, I need cars at 126, 127, 129, and 136. I may be able to reach back and get some law enforcement assistance, but, you know, in order to do what I do, I need to be in 5 places. So this system makes a whole lot more sense to me, even if we do, like I said, limit their job description. You know, if you want to volunteer to work the Festival of the Horse, have at it. That is an unpaid volunteer period on your choice.
I may be tripping out of one minute or something. Didn't one time didn't we even talk about having EMA giving them the authority to tap constables for help?
Yes, yeah, we discussed that up until Judge Lisby took away their lights and sirens policy. You know, it doesn't help me for you to show up with another car with no emergency equipment.
Judge, the city doesn't contribute to this budget, does it?
Yeah,
Well,
his final decision.
I mean, you're asking, does the city contribute on this?
Yes.
I mean,
Part of the 50-50 split for our
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah. Okay, but have you talked to them?
I've not talked with Tom.
Okay.
Asking for money?
No, I
They're
mean,
asking us.
there's potential of budget increase, and so.
Well, you know, if you said, okay, we're gonna hire him at $10 an hour, that's 400 hours
Right,
through
and,
the end of the year that we have.
I know, EMA, this is our decision. I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that they're aware
Well,
that,
I think it's our decision with their input, is what you're getting at, right?
No, and I agree. No, I agree.
but, you know,
Once again, it's
no, I understand.
the data for the last 3 years, and we've not had a declarable disaster since 2015, so I don't have that number when we had the major snow and we were out busting our butts. But for the last 3 years, we have averaged between 850 and 1,100 hours a year for the total of the volunteers. So, you know, I believe, not including FICA, because I don't know how to calculate that, that it's gonna be pretty close to a wash if we're at 17,000.
Like, I think our discussion of lights and sirens, but certainly no sirens and no blue lights.
Right.
Council's having to color lights they want, they just can't have blue.
Exactly. And I went down that same path with you, talking about are my volunteers allowed to use this stuff? As long as they're in a county vehicle, marked vehicle that's, have at it. I can't let you put lights and sirens in your car. So,
Didn't want some guy with overalls driving his soccer ball, man, pulling somebody over for speeding on the bypass.
right, absolutely. So we pulled back the emergency equipment in our vehicles, and, nobody's allowed to do that. But if I'm gonna do the whole harmless agreement, then, we're,
Rick,
Well, just, it kind of bothers me, the discussion earlier about being covered or not covered when the colonel, I'll use his name, or at the state level, says they're not covered, and you're talking to an attorney. I don't know who that is. Okay, so that.
Keiko had an attorney doing it.
That kind of bothers me that the state don't see it that way.
Jeff, do you have something to add there?
I need clarification on that.
Well, and I said that at the very beginning, but I know it was early on in the comments I made, but this is from Temple Jewett. Temple Jewett says emergency management volunteers are covered under the state program while performing preparedness functions or engaged in emergency response. Paid employees would be covered by KCO, but if they're not withholding taxes, then that would be a problem from a wage and hour standpoint. So what he's saying is that, yes, they're covered by the state program if they're responding to or performing emergency preparedness functions or engaged in an emergency response. So there is apparently a conflict there between what, but I think there was, I couldn't find it because I think you had a hard copy of it, Judge Covington, is I think Wayne Bird did indicate that he knew that they were covered, but I could be wrong there, and I don't want to go putting words in an email or, whatever, but I agree, that's one issue that needs to be addressed, but I think that what we're trying to respond to right now is just the immediate need for somebody to help with this emergency helpline, right?
That was my concern, and I just wanted everybody to be on one page, and I didn't want us to get,
And you've got a temporary fix right now for that.
and Rand, do you agree that?
Yeah, we're
under
covered.
We're covered
By the statute.
We can pay these
temporarily,
people the $10 an hour,
yeah,
right? And then we can maybe come back to this.
yeah. But I felt like we needed to talk about it. So it sounds like to me, the desire of the court is to share job description, share data from last 2 or 3 years, and then share what other counties are doing. And Alvin, you,
One other thing I'd like to see is a description of when they would be called to do.
oh, yeah.
What circumstances?
What triggers it?
What triggers it? What's the-
And I think I tried to cover that in that job description I gave you.
there are some of the agencies.
Right.
Okay.
I agree. It's like a
Yeah.
policy procedure.
Yeah,
so is that the will of the court to get those pieces of information and bring this back?
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yes.
Yes, sir. All right. I think we can do that.
All in favor of, all opposed?
All right.
Thank
We
you.
will do that, Mike, and we'll bring it back maybe at the work session or the next regular meeting.
all right, thank you.
Planning Commission appointment. You have had 2 names, and I finally, Joe Kane had recommended reaching out to a gentleman named Max Stone, and I made 2 or 3 stabs at connecting, and I finally connected with Mr. Stone today. And I know that generally I like to share, a written bio, but with timing, I did not have that opportunity, but I'd like to share some information about Mr. Stone. Mr. Stone works currently at Elmwood Stock Farm and works in management there. He's worked there since 2001, and before that, he worked for the state UK research farms for several years, and then he also worked under the Department of Ag as a staffer there in Frankfurt for several years before 2001. I don't know if anyone knows Mr. Stone. Do you? Yeah, but I wanted to, Joe Kane had given me that name, and I had to track him down, but I did track him down. So I've shared that information, and he sounds like a very worthwhile candidate as well. But we've shared bios on John Carter and Mary Singer. What questions or discussions does anyone have in relationship to the Planning Commission appointment and those three individuals that we've given names of?
Is Singer still on city council?
Mary Singer?
Oh, it's the.
This is Mary. Mary.
She was on the Parks Board, I mean.
She's been on Parks.
She's off there now.
She's on the Board of Adjustments now, but she resigned, didn't she?
She will or
She would, I think. Yes, she would. And, yes, that's the proper. Mr. Carter worked previously at the Planning and Zoning office at one time as well. I think we have three good names. Would anyone like to entertain a motion
To hire all three.
for one of them?
I'll make a motion for Mary Singer.
I'll say.
A second from Mr. Burke. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor?
I abstain.
Okay. Any opposed?
I abstain.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Why you abstain?
Rand, should I just put?
I'm Ken the Miss.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if you were gonna have a
No, I'm Ken the Miss Singer.
So that said, and then I will certainly keep those other two individuals in mind for other boards in the future. Yes. So that might be, yes, possibly.
Maybe on his involvement previously with our northern situation, or northern Scott County situation.
Next on the agenda, we have FY21 budget discussion. And all I wanted to do is talk. And I think it would be irresponsible of me if I did not bring up how the potential of the COVID coronavirus issue could negatively impact our revenue. I mean, it'd be, Bill, do you agree it'd be irresponsible for us not? So I got a historical document. This is Judge Lusby's payroll net profits ledger dating back to 86, 87.
Handwritten.
And it was handwritten, yes. But, you look back 07, 08, our payroll was at 11,493,000. 08, 09, it dropped to 9.6. 09, 10, 9. It was at 9 million. And then 11, 12, it started climbing back up towards 11. And then, of course, 14, 15 back to 13.6, and then last year 14.8. I just wanted you, for us, for planning purposes, to look at, do we need to take 25% off last year's? Do we need to take 30% off? Do we need to treat net profits at a very minimum, dropping that down to, historical data? In 09, 10, it was 900,000. In 15, 16, it was 6,668,000. It was bonanza. But we know that it is not going to be there, and it's the reality that we need to make plans accordingly. So I've asked all department heads and folks to only spend between now and in July 1 essential. I've said until further notice, let's just do what's essential.
We're kind of a nuclear winter, aren't we?
Yes, and let's cut it back to what's essential. If you have questions, call me. We've met with the budget committee. We've gone, we've worked on the general fund, and essentially we had a draft of what was going to be a recommendation before this hit, And then we've created another line called COVID-19. And we've gone down through there and tried to cut here, there, and yonder. You know, I asked Michelle, and let me pull up the email. I asked Michelle Ray, I said, Michelle, if, we took out we were talking about a 2% or a 3% raise across the board. If we took that out, what would that dollar figure be? And all those things I can share, but, I just think you need to have that information. And then, we had talked about a timeline that I put together the timeline because I wanted us all to be on one page about where we were, what time we were going to be submitting things, when we were going to be meeting, and when we were going to be discussing. And I'd like to push that timeline back just a little bit. And the reason being is, Toyota announced today, it's public information, they're not going to go back to work till the 20th of April. We hope that, the rest of the suppliers do as well or before.
Continuing to pay.
They are continuing, from what I could gather, they are continuing to pay through 3 weeks. And in the 4th week, they've made other arrangements, but they're also going ahead and issuing the company bonus that they usually get at that 4th week. So I don't have that release in front of me, but the immediate impact on payroll taxes, that's not going to be an issue, I don't think.
Well, that's
But what will happen is in 12 months, what the unknown, go ahead.
well, I mean, that's for full-time employees. That's not the temps, which we will lose their payroll tax because they're,
But the temp services can file for expanded unemployment benefits,
okay, yeah.
and they'll get regular pay.
Do we get payroll tax off unemployment?
So, Social Security and federal income tax, state income tax comes off unemployment.
Okay, if that's a scenario, then that's good.
I don't know payroll tax does or
I'll
not.
have to check. I'm not, Stacy, will you write that down for us to check?
Do you want to talk about kind of what we,
Yeah,
in the budget committee, the question was, do you, that COVID-19 budget line, do you 25 or 30% cut in revenue? And I think we landed on 30. So you've got what would have been versus what could be, and I think 30 is probably worst case scenario, but it's the fear of the unknown between now and then of what happens. And did we wipe out the line of the net profits?
we dropped it to $500,000.
In that line as opposed to, it was 1.5 million, I believe.
It's never been under
Right.
600,000 or 700,000.
Yeah.
Ne- Historically, the very lowest that I see it was $900,000. So do we want to put it at 900? I'm just asking. I don't know.
I would prepare for worst case scenario. In previous lives, I've had to do budgets, and you budget for what your net sales are gonna be, and then you budget for like 5 or 10 or 15% reduction. And once you hit a 20% mark, from that point on, it becomes nuclear winter. You quit buying toilet paper, pens, pencils, you start buying stuff from home. But I think we need to have a contingency plan on what we feel it should be, and then what reality is gonna tell us it really is.
So, go ahead. You want to share
I was gonna say
more?
that's- In the committee, that's what we had, and me, Alvin, Michelle, Jeff, Stacy, Judge.
And we've done a lot of work on our capital projects, and we were gonna weave those recommendations into the budget. And at this time, I don't think that we can, I don't think we can make that type of commitment. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Here's my two biggest concerns. Self-contained breathing apparatus for our fire department. That's about 700,000. I don't think that that's negotiable. Number two, we were looking at those voting machines and David had a good idea of if we had any money in this budget that we could earmark 125,000 towards, and then 125 next year.
No, that was somebody else's idea. I had a different idea, but that
Well,
was
maybe,
Stacy.
that was yours, Stacy? Well, let's give Stacy the credit.
But
But you're a part of that discussion about how I'm trying to spread it out. And that's the value of a team. Stacy, please know that I did not try to slight you. Yeah, we put Stacy over in the corner. But those were the only two things that are capital. And then there were a couple vehicle requests that we felt like we would make used vehicle requests instead of new vehicle requests. And that's for our discussion as well.
Let me ask you this question, and I know things are happening, Judge, just minute by minute. I have heard that in the bill passed by Congress, that there would be funding coming back to municipalities.
If it dribbles down to us, and I don't know that, you've heard that it would?
I heard that there is some money that could go to municipalities. What that is, I have no idea. I didn't know if you knew any more than that.
So I will try to do some research on that, and I'll
Andy
call.
Barr did an interview this morning.
I'm
I
gonna
think he
call
said that.
Gary Moore and ask Gary if he knows. David, do you think that'd be a good suggestion?
probably.
And then, we had talked about April 10th being our reading of our first ordinance. The first reading, my suggestion is we kick this back to possible first reading to April 23rd, or even, Stacy, you always help with the budget deadlines with DLG. Could we kick it?
Go another meeting, but
Could we go one more meeting to the first meeting of May? Because we don't have to have it, we don't have to have it to DLG until,
it would have to be no later than the first meeting in June, but that's pushing it, because if there are errors, you have to call special meetings. So,
so we can push all this to May would be the best practice. So the whole purpose of that conversation was to get input from you, but then talk about pushing this timeline back into first reading, first meeting of May, second reading, second meeting of May.
But even then, the special meeting doesn't cost us anything extra, does it?
It doesn't. It doesn't. But by then, maybe we'll see where we're at. Or as we move into April, maybe see. But I just wanted to talk about it. And if y'all have any suggestions, please reach out to me. Please let me know, and we'll advise.
Well, by pushing it also, that first meeting in May is the 8th of May, but by pushing it, part of just having that attitude is gonna also give us a little bit more time to see what the next few weeks holds as far as this virus. So,
Stacy, what would be the last meeting in May, that Thursday? 28th? All right. Okay. With it being a special called meeting, we cannot consider any new business or any other matters, so
motion to adjourn.
I have one other question on the budget.
I'm sorry,
The tax deadline's been pushed back, so,
to July 15th.
so how much is that gonna affect our revenue the rest of this year?
I'll,
And that goes for local returns too, I'm assuming.
But that's what I'm asking.
yeah,
I
let me
wondered
check
about
on,
that myself as a
So has it
taxpayer.
been pushed back entirely? You don't have to make a payment and then file in the future?
April 15th filers do not have to do anything till July.
So, okay, all right. So it's not like if you're filing an
Fiscal year
extension.
filers, they're not affected. I
Right,
still gotta file my normal date.
Right.
But anybody that was filing April 15th, they don't have to do anything till.
Okay.
We probably need to figure out if we need to do anything, locally to extend that, if something you want to. I don't know if it's under the federal legislation, that your local return you would file, that is extended as well.
I'll check with Scott Hall. Can you write that down as well for us? Any other questions or comments about the budget process discussion? Appreciate your all's input, and we will get through this together. I would ask you, if you have a smartphone, or I'm pretty sure the laptop could do it too, to download Zoom. It's an app that would allow you to remotely come into, that's my question. There's a camera on there.
Download it. I think if you send out an email, they click on that link.
It goes that link.
Yeah.
It's one of the easiest ones I've used.
Yeah.
You just need to be sure you use Chrome. You gotta be on Chrome. You can't.
Make
be
sure we
on-
got Chrome on there, and then if we have to meet, we'll use Zoom. Motion, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion from Mr. Hostetter, second from Mr. Burke. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously.